Ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube universe, what is going on with you on this Wednesday evening? It is Wednesday, June 7th, 2023, roughly 7 o'clock p.m. California time. I am, of course, your always gracious host, Fallon from GoNootropics.com. Coming at you with the coffee. Cheers. For the first time in a long time, we are drinking the coffee. Ladies and gentlemen, drop a comment. How are you doing? What is going on in your neck of the woods, baby? Hope you all are doing well. Today is, of course, Wednesday. Kind of a lazy Wednesday around the house. My boss is preparing for knee surgery, so there's no work to be done today. I'm kicking it. We are cruising through the video. Today we remember the KillDozer, baby. There's not a lot of stories that really pull at me, these days. There's not very many stories that I look at and I go, well, here's an interesting story, right? How many thousands, hundreds, thousands of stories come across your timeline every day? But the story of the KillDozer has always been a story that has sparked my interest because it just, it's like I like to watch a lot of heist movies, movies like Taxi Driver, where you get this disenfranchised person who's been pushed to the outskirts of society and who just totally goes unhinged. I love those stories, right? And the KillDozer is one of these stories that grabbed my attention. This happened back in 2004. I didn't hear about it back then. If I did, I didn't care. I was in high school. Nobody really pays attention to news stories when they're in high school. But this happened in 2004. I must have been maybe a freshman or sophomore in high school. And this is, of course, many of you might have heard of this. This is the story of the KillDozer. This guy who bought a piece of land and kind of had a legal battle back and forth with the city. The city tried to shut him down because he couldn't build. They were making it very hard for him to build a sewer line that connected to the local city sewer supply or something. There was a big concrete business involved that wanted to buy the land that this particular gentleman owned. They needed this land, but he owned it. And so the concrete company had a lot of these guys in, city council, and they had a lot of pull with creating a lot of the local laws. And so they made this guy's life very hard to conduct his business. And they basically shut him down because they made it so difficult for him to conduct business, his machine shop on this piece of land, that after years of trying everything and trying to work with the city and trying to work with this concrete company that had, their business right next to his, he eventually found it so difficult to manage and deal with that he just lost it. And he ended up building what they call the KillDozer. And this is, he welded himself shut inside of a tank, right? Inside of a tank. Welded himself shut from the inside so he couldn't even escape. Welded himself shut, mounted a bunch of guns, and took off on a totally unhinged rampage around town, taking out the local concrete shop that he was having a problem with, taking out City Hall. They sent Apache helicopters after him. They sent tanks. They sent SWAT teams trying to get this guy out of the tank that he built. And it's a story of just a man who just had enough, right? Just had enough, a man can only take so much. A man can only lose so much before he just snaps, And if you watch some of these documentaries, you read some of, the reports, there's some people on one side that say, well, he was a totally deranged lunatic. Like who does that? Who seals himself inside of a tank and goes on this rampage, taking out City Hall, taking out the concrete business, causing millions of dollars of property damage. He sold all of his assets prior to the rampage, so they couldn't liquidate his assets to recoup the damages from all the damage he caused. And he ends up getting stuck, of course, kind of wedged inside one of the buildings he's trying to plow through. He pops his radiator and ends up shooting himself in the tomb, right? He basically entombed himself inside of this tank. And when the gig was up, he just shot himself. He just went out. He shot himself. There's some recordings of him talking, and he says it himself. He's like, "Look, I've got no family. I've got nothing to live for. This kind of business that I wanted to build was the only thing I had going for me. This is it." And so here was a man who was pushed to the edge. He had nothing to lose. And so he goes on the rampage, right? And this is a story, I think, a lot of people consider this guy a hero, like an American hero, because in many ways we feel that we've also been disenfranchised in many ways. We've been pushed to the outskirts and limited in some of the things that we can do in this world. So when we look at a story like this, it's like we look at the KillDozer, and it's kind of like this voyeuristic pleasure that we get out of watching a man that if we had the wherewithal and the courage, we would love to do as well, right? It's like we imagine ourselves in the KillDozer. And I think that's why these stories are so popular. The story of the KillDozer, why so many people are drawn to stories like this, because it represents the man who's just been pushed to the edge. And for a lot of us, that's kind of how we feel. We might have not been pushed quite like he was, but many of us very much feel that like the noose is around our neck, the boot is on our throat. We don't really have a lot of options. We're too scared to kind of do anything, but here's a man who entombed himself in a tank. It's like he wasn't just fighting our battle, but he represented millions of people and their own personal fights that they go through in their own life. And it's like this therapeutic thing, watching this tank just plow through City Hall. It's like, you watch these heist movies, and you watch these movies where arguably you could argue that he was in the wrong. The guy in the KillDozer was in the wrong. The people robbing the bank and pulling off the heist are in the wrong. But don't you root for them, especially if somebody's robbing a bank? Isn't there like a part of you that wants them to get away with it? At least that's the case for me. I hope they get away with the bank robbery. I'm always rooting for the guys pulling off the heist, because it's like sometimes you have no option, right? A man can only lose so much. If you spend your whole life losing, and you kind of try to do things the straight and narrow, and you try to play by the book, and you try to do this and that, you just reach to a point where you could only lose so much as a man before you snap. All right, this happened with, the Unabomber. This happened with the KillDozer guy. And it's happening to a lot of people. It's just they're the ones that did something about it, Excuse me. They're the ones that went out there, did something about it, channeled that rage, and fully committed. And I think that's the other thing that people find respectable about these certain things, is the level of commitment. Like when you weld yourself inside of a bulldozer with like super thick metal sheets from the inside, so there's no way you can get out. Even if you wanted to, there's no possible way to get out. You entomb yourself into a tank and take off on a rampage. That's like fully sending it, baby. That's like full commitment. And even if, there's an argument you could say, well, this guy was totally deranged. and what he did was wrong, you got to respect the commitment, man. I think people respect people who fully commit to something. Even if you don't agree with the thing they're committing to, you're not going to get any kind of respect committing to something halfway, right? This is like the worst. I find myself in this position a lot, and I think this is the downfall of a lot of people, is just lack of commitment. You say you're a Christian, but you don't really commit. Like, this is kind of where I am in my kind of life, and it's like a disgusting thing. There's no respect in committing 25% to something. If you're gonna do it, if you're gonna punch at the wall, why not go through the wall? You know what I'm saying? It's like you're gonna punch the wall with 25% of your effort. It's like, if you're gonna do something, do it fully. And then you learn from that fully committed state later. That's where you kind of find where the line is. A lot of people say the truth is in the middle, right? Don't you hear this? The truth is somewhere in the middle. But you can't find the middle unless you go to the edges, baby. This is why sometimes I talk in these very extreme ways, like yesterday's video. A lot of you guys thought I was just completely disowning nootropics and shoving them all under the bus. And it's not that I believe everything I said in that video, but I find it somewhat therapeutic to kind of explore the extremes of something. Like, either something works 100% or it works 0%. And then you look at those extremes, you navigate the extremes of something, you go to the edge, you fall off the edge, and then you find, well, here's where the edge is, here's where the truth lies, and you just never get to you always want to kind of be at the edge, and there's really no way to find that edge until you walk over it, and sometimes that edge is quite literally deadly. There's some edges you don't want to cross. I'm watching there's a YouTube channel I've been watching called The Adventure Twins, and these guys go caving in these wild caves. You should definitely check their videos out. They're descending hundreds of feet into these caves, exploring miles into these caves, shoving themselves into these really narrow passageways. It's like, if you have claustrophobia, you're gonna have panic attacks just watching these videos. But this is another example of people who are fully committing to something. They're fully committing to the journey, and they're finding out where that edge is. And there's a lot of people in the comments, like on those videos too, saying, "Oh, what you're doing is too dangerous. What you're doing is, haven't you thought about the gases in the cave? Haven't you? What if you descend into one of these caves and somebody, unties the rope and this and that?" Well, these guys are going to the edge. They're finding out where the edge is. What they're doing is risky, but they're pushing the limits. And I think that's where you find, once you commit and once you decide that you're going to commit to something fully and just go all the way into the cave, baby, all the way in, that's where you find the treasure. That's where the treasure is. The treasure's not in the middle, right? It's always at the bottom. It's always, isn't that true? If there's treasure out there, you think it's like right outside your door. You just open the door and there's the treasure. No, it's deep in the cave. It's like super deep in the cave. But watching people fully commit, like the KillDozer, even though you could argue that what he did was, unhinged and this and that, what are you going to do to a guy that's fully committed? You're always going to lose. City Hall lost that day. The concrete company lost that day because they pushed a man to his limits, and they had a man on their hands that was fully committed to seeing them destroyed. And it's very hard to push back against something that's fully committed, that has reached terminal velocity. And you could say this or that, but the steam train is coming, baby. The steam train is coming. So that is the video of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, drop a comment. Let me know what you think about the KillDozer. Let me know what you think about 100% committing to the things in your life. Is that going to be better for you, you think? You think you should only commit 25%? Why not commit 100% of your effort, your time, your energy, your wherewithal? Why not commit 100% to your projects, or towards your spiritual life, or towards the things in your life that are good? Why don't you commit 100%? Why all this 10% stuff, right? What do you think's causing this? Let me know in the comments. Fallon, GoNootropics.com. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I will see you very soon. Peace.